She's just a pencil pusher from logistics, probably here to audit our paper clips. Get her out of the way before she trips over a cable. The words, dripping with condescension, echoed through the tense quiet of the simulator control room. The crowd of junior naval aviators, young men steeped in the culture of bravado, chuckled nervously. Lieutenant Commander Evans, a man whose polished image was as important to him as his flight hours, gestured dismissively toward the woman standing silently in the back. She was unassuming, dressed in a simple civilian contractor polo, her features placid, her posture relaxed but attentive. She offered no reaction, no flinch of indignation, no defensive reply. Her silence was a deep, still pool in the frantic river of the room. But when the base admiral later saw the symbol hidden beneath her sleeve, the laughter would die in their throats, replaced by a silence born not of awkwardness, but of pure, unadulterated awe. If you believe that true respect is earned through action, not demanded by rank, type competence in the comments below. The high-stakes simulation was already spiraling out of control. On the main screen, the virtual F-35 Lightning II, 100 million phantom of circuits and code, had suffered a catastrophic cascade failure. Total engine loss, total systems failure. A dead stick. The young ensign at the controls, one of the Navy's brightest, was fighting a losing battle against physics, his panicked voice crackling over the comms. Lieutenant Commander Evans's slick composure was fracturing, his commands becoming sharp. Contradictory barks. He paced behind the consoles, his agitation a stark contrast to the quiet woman still observing. From the corner, he finally noticed her again, her gaze fixed on a secondary monitor displaying telemetry data. "What are you even looking at?" he snapped, his authority fraying. He saw her long sleeves, a detail that in his manufactured distress seemed like an act of defiance. In a gross overstep born of pure ego, he decided to make an example of her. "Base policy, ma'am. Unescorted civilians in a secure area must be properly identified. Roll up your sleeves." It wasn't a request. It was a command. An act of public humiliation designed to assert his dominance in a situation where he had clearly lost it. The room grew colder, the injustice hanging heavy in the air. The alarm shrieked, a digital scream announcing the inevitable. The simulated F-35 was now in an unrecoverable dive. Seconds from impact, Evans stood frozen, his playbook empty, his arrogance a useless shield against the unfolding disaster. The young ensign's breathing was ragged over the speakers, the sound of a man accepting his fate. But Evelyn Reed did not argue. She did not protest the humiliation. With a methodical calm that seemed alien in the panicked room, she looked not at Evans, but at the main screen. She took a slow breath and then, deliberately, she rolled up the sleeve of her left polo shirt. Without a word to the man who had insulted her, she stepped past him, her presence suddenly filling the room. She leaned toward the main comms panel and pressed the transmit button. Her voice, the first anyone had heard from her, cut through the chaos like a surgeon's scalpel. It was unnervingly calm, a low, authoritative alto. "Ensign, this is Reed." Acknowledged, startled, the pilot stammered, "Ma'am." Her instructions flowed a sequence of impossible, counterintuitive commands. Disregard previous orders. Set flaps to 20. Bleed your speed to 180 knots. Give me a 5-degree nose-up attitude. Now, it was heresy against the emergency flight manual. A maneuver of breathtaking risk that seemed to court, not avoid, total failure. The effect was instantaneous and miraculous. On the massive screen, the plummeting nose of the virtual jet lifted, its fatal dive miraculously shallowing into a stable, controlled glide. The frantic red warnings on the display flickered, replaced by amber caution lights. The descent rate, once catastrophic, slowed to something survivable. Reed's voice continued, a calm, rhythmic cadence that was both a series of instructions and a lifeline. Easy on the rudder, son. Watch your crosswind component. You have the runway. Flare, flare, flare. Now, in the simulator, the F-35 touched down on the tarmac, not with a crash, but with a hard, screeching kiss of tires on asphalt, skidding in a cloud of virtual smoke before coming to a perfect, complete stop just meters from the end of the runway. A dead stick landing from an impossible altitude and attitude. The wailing alarms abruptly cut out. Into the void, a profound, deafening silence descended upon the room. Every soul, from the seasoned technicians to the cocky young pilots, stared with slack-jawed disbelief, their gazes shifting from the saved aircraft on the screen to the unassuming woman who had saved it. Evans, his face ashen, could only whisper, "How? That's not possible." Just then, the door to the control room swished open, and Admiral Thompson entered, his face a thundercloud. The base commander, a man forged in the crucibles of desert storm and enduring freedom, had been alerted to the imminent crash and had come to see the fallout for himself. His sharp eyes swept across the room, instantly clocking the stunned faces, the successful landing on the screen, and the pale, shell-shocked form of Lieutenant Commander Evans. Then his gaze fell upon Evelyn Reed. He didn't look at her face. His eyes locked on her exposed left forearm, and he stopped dead. The storm on his face dissipated, replaced by an expression of profound, almost sacred respect. He walked past the sputtering Evans as if he were a piece of furniture, his focus entirely on Reed. He stopped directly in front of her, his posture shifting from that of a commander to that of a subordinate. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low and heavy with meaning. He gently gestured to the tattoo on her arm. It was a stylized three-headed dog, Cerberus, its neck entwined with a broken chain and the Roman numeral 7. "I haven't seen one of those in 20 years, the Admiral said, his voice barely a whisper. He then turned to the stunned, silent room. "For those of you who just witnessed a miracle, allow me to explain. You're looking at the insignia of Project Chimera's Test Pilot Division. We called them the Lost Platoon." The Admiral's voice filled the silent room. Project Chimera wasn't a standard program. It was a ghost project. They were the people we sent up in experimental aircraft to find the absolute edges of the flight envelope and then deliberately fly past them. He stared hard at Evans, whose face had gone from pale to chalk white. They didn't use simulators to practice emergencies. They flew planes that were designed to fail, intentionally putting themselves into dead stick falls, flat spins, and catastrophic systems failures. They flew the missions that our manuals, our engineers, and our computers all said were non-survivable. They did it to write the very procedures that save pilots like your ensign today. His gaze returned to Evelyn Reed, softer now, full of a reverence that bordered on awe. The Lost Platoon was their call sign. There were only 7 of them, 7 pilots willing to dance with death to teach us how to live. We, the Navy, we thought. They were all gone. The Admiral turned to a secure terminal, typed in a code, and pulled up a heavily redacted file. The name read, Evelyn Reed, call sign, Nix. Flight hours, classified, status, senior analyst, aerospace engineering command. She wasn't a pencil pusher. She was a living legend, a ghost who had written the book on survival with her own hands. The story didn't just leak from the control room. It detonated across the entire Naval Air Station. The tale of the quiet civilian contractor who rolled up her sleeve to reveal the mark of a phantom unit, then talked a pilot through an impossible landing, became instant folklore. The name Nix, once a classified secret, was now spoken in hushed, reverent tones in mess halls and maintenance bays. The recording of her calm, steady voice became an underground training tool, passed from pilot to pilot as a masterclass in what they call supernatural composure. Lieutenant Commander Evans endured his own quiet crucible. After a long, silent meeting in the Admiral's office, he emerged a changed man. The next morning, he found Evelyn Reed in a hangar, her hands deep in the wiring of an F-35's landing gear assembly. Stripped of all his previous arrogance, he approached her not as a superior, but as a student. "Ma'am," he began, his voice clear and steady. "Thank you. You saved my pilot's life, and you taught me a lesson I needed to learn." He then executed the sharpest, most formal salute of his career, a gesture of profound respect for an authority that had nothing to do with rank and everything to do with proven, undeniable competence. Evelyn Reed simply gave him a short, professional nod of acknowledgement, her focus already returning to the complex mechanics before her. She wasn't there for apologies or accolades. She was there for the work, the quiet pursuit of perfection that had defined her entire life. A few days later, the young ensign whose virtual life she had saved found her. He said nothing, but simply held out his first solo patch, a deeply personal and cherished token for any aviator. Reed accepted it with a small, almost imperceptible smile, a rare crack in her stoic facade. The incident became a catalyst for cultural change on the base. Cockiness was suddenly seen as a liability, and quiet expertise, regardless of its source, was given a new premium. The junior officers and enlisted crews began to refer to the high-tech simulator bay by a new unofficial name, the Nix Terminal, and on the main briefing room bulletin board, someone pinned a printed screenshot of the F-35 sitting safely on the runway. Scrawled underneath it in black marker were for simple words that became the base's new motto: "Calm is a superpower." Months later, the story of Evelyn Nix Reed was no longer just gossip. It was doctrine. It was the first story told to every new pilot and technician arriving at the station. A foundational lesson in the vast difference between bravado and ability. Lieutenant Commander Evans became a more effective leader, known for his willingness to listen, especially to the quietest person in the room. The young ensign, with the memory of that calm, authoritative voice etched into his soul, became one of the finest aviators in his wing, renowned for his unerring composure in genuine emergencies. And Evelyn Reed, she was gone, having moved on to the next unsolvable problem at the next classified facility. Her legacy was not in the fame she never sought, but in the standards she effortlessly set. True authority, the entire base now understood, wasn't something you wore on your collar. It was something you demonstrated when everything was on the line. The Cerberus tattoo was not a boast. It was a scar with a story. A quiet testament to the fact that the most profound strength is forged in silence and proven in the storm. The world is filled with the deafening noise of self-proclaimed experts and the hollow echoes of unearned confidence. But true greatness is never loud. It is not declared in speeches or demanded in meetings. It is demonstrated quietly and definitively when the stakes are highest. It is forged in crucibles no one ever sees, so that it can be revealed in moments. No one will ever forget. The quiet competence of a true professional will always, in the end, silence the loud ignorance of the arrogant. proving that what you have done will forever speak with more authority than what you say you can. DOA legacy is not what is carved into a monument, but what is carried forward in the changed hearts and minds of those who witness greatness firsthand. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud arrogance, and where silent strength defin, ease their worth, subscribe to Heart Listens. Peace